And I'm sitting there, I'm like, this sounds so familiar. And then I realized that I wrote about Amy's theater group for the forward. That was my first article. I broke into the forward when I met that editor
Right.
at the AGPA
Wow.
conference. I said, like, I'd love to write for you. And she says, okay, give me ideas.
Shalom, friends. Welcome to Orange Socks, a podcast celebrating Jewish creativity. I'm your host, Yitzchak Muli, inviting you to join me in exploring the soul of Jewish expression. Shalom, friends. Welcome to the Orange Socks podcast. And I am in South Florida. My daughter's running a marathon, and I'm here and take the opportunity to come spend time with a friend. So I'm here with Sara Spielman. Spielman?
Sara Trappler Spielman is how I publish my articles.
Okay, that's right. And we have crossed paths. It's been a while now.
18 years.
18 years?
Yeah.
You tracked it?
Yeah, because I was pregnant with my daughter who's turning 18 when I went to your first art show.
Okay, wow. 18 years, that's a long
Pennsylvania,
time. Yeah,
on the border of
New
Jersey.
New Hope, Lambertville. Art is Zen Arts. My gosh, that's a long time ago.
That was your first art show,
That
right?
was probably my first art show, yeah. In a real gallery. I've done some JCCs or whatever, some other hallways, but yeah. Wow, so you were there right from the beginning.
Yeah.
That's so how did you hear about my art? How did that end up happening?
Right. So, and it was actually my Shabbos, like tonight. It's interesting.
Okay.
That's why I spent Shabbos by Chabad, like 10 minutes away, so that I could get to the gallery just in time, right?
Wow.
When it opened, soon after Shabbos ended. And I'm not sure how I originally heard about you. I think I was writing about your opening for Chabad.org and the forward.
Okay.
So it's possible that Chabad.org told me about you.
Okay.
And then I asked if it was okay if I also pitched your story to the forward. And they were fine with it. And then I think that the forward had maybe the first coverage of the show.
Yeah.
And we put a lot of your art in there. And then I wrote a different style story for Chabad.org because it's a different audience. So I think maybe that's how I heard about you, from Chabad.org. I was writing for them at the time.
So I'm very fortunate. That's for sure. I'm very fortunate because you've written about my work throughout the years, numerous times, for the Wall Street Journal.
When you had the Creative Soul and the gallery
in Kingston Avenue. Yeah. Gosh, 18 years.
Yeah, so we've come full circle.
We have come full circle, yeah, and we have a lot more to do.
Yeah.
Both you and I.
Yeah, it was just also such interesting timing, how the article I just wrote recently about your menorahs over the years, which was published in Mishpacha magazine's Hanukkah issue this past Hanukkah, how you're an artist from Australia, and they actually said to me, what kind of news hook can we give, because he's an Australian artist,
right?
To lead the article with. And of course, no one would have anticipated
little do we know
that was going to happen on Hanukkah in Sydney.
Right.
And they found something that there was some menorah lighting that was banned. I don't know if it was
canceled due to the local government, the local township decided, it's easier not to, which is, the
was
typical.
That Sydney,
I think that was in Melbourne, which is the city that I'm from a long time ago. It's a crazy world.
And your menorahs were all about light over darkness, which is sort of what kind of went viral after the Sydney attack.
Yeah.
And it was just such sort of an eerie coincidence how here we did a whole story about your menorahs, a lot of them being in response to terrorist attacks over the years, the RV that went out,
the whole light over darkness campaign, really, yeah. So I have a new article for you.
Let's hear it.
I've started working on what I call the Bondi menorah. Wow. So I've started working on. I have a design where I'm tweaking the elements, but it's both a menorah and a memorial in one structure, as one piece. And the idea is to pitch it to the local municipality and to the local community in Sydney and Bondi to create a permanent memorial for the victims, which is both a memorial and a menorah as part of the one piece.
That was similar to what you did, was it last year, for the Chabad house that had the menorah vandalized, and then you did. That's when you released
Yeah,
your new
yeah,
menorah.
yeah.
The
Well, yeah, a menorah went out
one that you had on permanent
to
display.
Boulder, which is yeah. So there's a menorah now out in Boulder that that is lighting up the darkness in the same square where there was a terrorist attack. Yeah, it's interesting. You know, my work is so bright and colorful, and yet I am sensitive to the darkness and to responding to the darkness. But I'm sure you write a lot more than just about my work. You're a writer. You're
Yeah.
how would you define your? I mean, writing is so broad. What kind of
Yeah.
writer are you?
Right. So I always had, I guess you can call it a writer's soul. And as a kid, I always loved journaling and writing poetry. And through high school, I sort of was involved in whatever newsletter was going out, or, I just sort of had that pull to write. And at the time, actually, college was very much discouraged. I grew up Chabad in Crown Heights, and traditionally, it was not the path that people took after high school. And I had this real strong pull to go to college, but I wanted it to be a Jewish college. So I went to Stern College for Women, part of YU. And I really felt like I wanted to utilize my talents for good and to use it in the ways of Torah and Chassidus. And I
Right.
wasn't yet sure what my calling was, but when I was at Stern, I kind of like found my path because there were a lot of creatives and just other from women who were pursuing careers while also wanting to live an observant life.
Right.
And I started writing for the college paper. It was called The Observer. And I really got a lot of hands on journalism skills while at college. I was also majoring in English communications with a special track in journalism. And so I was learning and also practicing by writing the articles for the paper. And when I graduated, I started basically right out of college, started publishing. I had an internship at Hadassah magazine. I had a professor who was one of the editors at Hadassah magazine, and I found that there was a part of the magazine that was like these small blurbs about Jewish films and Jewish exhibits and basically
Right.
Jewish arts.
Right.
And I started finding, I don't know how these stories came my way, and that's always the way it's been.
Right.
I just find stories or they
Right.
find me.
Right.
And I just started finding very interesting like films that were playing at Jewish film festivals, and I would pitch them to Hadassah, and then I would watch the film. Either I would go to the festival. If it was out of New York, I would get in those days they used to mail like a VHS tape or
Right. Wow.
a disc, a CD
Okay.
to me, and probably CD in those days already. But and I would write a blurb about it, and then I would also start writing about different other exhibits, Jewish exhibits, and things going on for Hadassah. And I was very much drawn to the Jewish arts, and I felt like I wanted to give it publicity, especially Jewish artists who didn't necessarily have a voice or a platform. They would do their own thing, but not necessarily would people know about it.
Right.
So I felt very pulled to cover the Jewish art scene. And when I first got married, soon after graduation, I was living on the Lower East Side. There was a lot of Jewish culture surrounding me, and as well as when I was in college. So I was very much in the art scene. And then shortly after, I moved to Crown Heights. And when I was living on the Lower East Side, I actually started writing for a place called the Grand Street News, and it was very much hard news reporting. So it was run by a Jewish firm guy, Nachabad, and he had me covering all the local politics. I would go to police precinct meetings and ribbon cuttings and different small little politics and events that were happening on the Lower East Side. And at the time, I had my oldest daughter was a baby in the stroller, and I would like push her along, and I'd give her a little notepad and a pen to scribble on as I went and
That's
covered these
great.
events. And actually, he got me my first digital camera. We didn't have cameras on our phones then, and this
Right.
was
Right.
20 something years ago.
Right.
And he bought this camera and said, it's for the paper, and I would take pictures and slowly upload them and send in my articles. And I did that for probably for about 2 years while I was living on the Lower East Side. And I also, one day, when I think before I started writing for the Grand Street News, I saw an ad in a local paper. It was called the Downtown Express. And they were looking for a writer who's a parent, a mother or a father, and a writer living in Lower Manhattan who wants to write a column. So I started writing about my experience of being a new mom in Manhattan.
Right.
And so I started getting into it. It's sort of just
So like that sounds a lot more personal. I mean, that sounds like a dream job if you're looking for it. Like you're writing about yourself, writing about the things that are meaningful to you, writing about your experiences, you know, going to the precinct and writing about the latest whatever. Like, was that fulfilling to you as a writer?
right.
Was that just a step along the way to get something
Yeah.
else? Or
Right. So some of the stories were dry. But I think that I just always loved, I actually found that I loved reporting. And I think that's where I started being a little bit less creative, whereas maybe before college I was exploring more poetry, and then when I discovered journalism, I think I just, no matter what the story was, I think I loved just telling stories. And um it's always going to be relevant to someone. So I don't necessarily feel at the time, I didn't feel like this is my shlichus. This is where
right,
I'm going to bring my light to the world,
right,
covering those type of stories of the
right,
precinct, which really didn't have personal relevance to me.
right,
But soon after, when I moved to Crown Heights, that's when I started getting much more involved in the Chabad arts scene. And that's, I think, where I really felt like this is more of a shlichus for me. Um, I started covering stories that were like exhibits at the JCM. Ichikaduzi had
right.
an office above 770.
Oh,
And I
really?
wrote about him. It was incredible action. And I remember bringing my daughter. It was so exciting because she used to see his videos on
Right,
Chabad.org.
right,
And he had this like screen, this backdrop screen, and he was doing his puppets. He created this whole world with just like in one little office room
right.
with this like screen behind him. And I interviewed him. I'm sorry, his name's
David Taub, right? David
yeah,
Taub, yeah.
Chase's brother.
Chase's brother, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know what
he's
he's
a
up
wild
to now.
creative, yeah. My kids still talk about Chickaduzi. I mean, that was a real moment. That was, yeah.
Yeah. And so I started covering a lot of stories for Chabad.org. And what was happening was I realized that these stories are like a gold mine for the secular news outlets. Because you can stay within your bubble on Crown Heights, and we'll read about it, or other Chabad communities will read about it on Chabad.org. But I wanted the greater world to know about it. And so often what I would do is well, it depends where I got the story from. Sometimes artists or creatives would just hear about me and ask if I could write about them. And sometimes I would just discover them just by seeing their stuff online or going to their events.
Right,
And a lot of the places I was writing for in those earlier years of my career were for the Forward and Tablet, which were more liberal outlets that were not necessarily looking to give positive coverage for Hasidic people, and they would
right,
often try to find stories of like catching us doing something wrong,
right,
and
right,
that would be a great story for them.
right.
And here I was bringing them stories, and they didn't seem to
Did
mind
you,
that I was from the same
were they
world.
pitching you any, did you write any of those stories? I mean, did they give you the got you stories?
Did they provide me with the
Yeah.
ideas?
No,
No,
no, no. But did they hire you to write those stories as well?
no, no. I pitched it to them.
No, the gotcha stories or the positive
Oh no,
stories?
no, the positive stories.
Right. So I'm saying
Positive stories.
I'm asking about the gotcha stories. Did you write any of those, or you stayed away
No,
from
I
those,
stayed
or
away from
they had different people to write those?
different people. But actually, once it came up that I had a story for them, and it was it ended up the New York Times broke the story. It was a trend, basically for from women to be having home births, especially with it's more modest, more private. And I told the editor at she was at the time she was at the Forward and she was moving to Tablet, and she said to me, "Hold off on this. I want the story, but I'm about to move to Tablet. Let's wait."
let's do it there.
During that time,
New York
the
Times
New York
took it.
Times got the story.
Right.
So it was no longer really relevant because it was already had been covered. And so, I mean, it was relevant, but it was like they really broke it. So they were trying to find some sort of angle, and they were trying to, and the direction they wanted to take was not going to be a Kiddush Hashem. And I said, I'm not comfortable doing that. And they ended up, without me knowing, they found another writer to do it. So, you know,
Right.
it is what it is, but I would not.
No, it's definitely, we all have to have our standards. We all have to have our red lines that we don't cross.
Right.
And that as a writer, you're, especially, as a reporter, news, you're writing someone else's story. And you got an editor telling you how they want it skewed. So, you have to put your foot down at some points.
Right. Yeah. Especially because I see this, like you've said about your work as a shlichus.
Right.
I'm not looking to bring negative attention at all.
Right.
And I just want to bring positivity. So I felt that I had a unique role because I'm Chabad and I had the experience as a journalist and I had access to stories that their reporters didn't have access to.
Right.
Because most of the reporters were secular.
Right.
And so therefore I was able to bring them stories that they liked, actually. And a lot of them involved Baal Teshuvas because Baal Teshuvas were coming from a world where they had experience in the arts.
Right.
And they were using it, they were transforming it for the good. And and that's what I always found so interesting. And I actually did a story for Tablet magazine about Baal Teshuva artists. I don't know were you in that piece? I don't remember.
I don't know.
But I covered a few different artists who were Baal Teshuva specifically and how they used their art to basically serve God instead of the opposite of what arts could be if it goes in a negative direction.
Right.
So, and they liked it, and they actually had a lot of readers that really liked that story. So that's why I felt I was in a unique position. And for many years, and I also worked for Hadassah magazine, and also a lot of the Jewish papers. I became a member of what's called the AJPA. I don't know if they're around anymore, but it stands for the American Jewish Press Association. And I went to one of their conferences soon after I graduated, and there were different editors there. One of them was from the Forward, and that's how we initially made a connection at that conference. And that's when I learned that there's something called a freelance writer, which I didn't know there was such a thing.
College didn't teach you that.
Right, exactly. I thought you have to work in-house for a magazine or a newspaper.
Right.
And they were not yet obsolete. I mean, there were a lot of newspapers then.
Right.
And what was great was that when I was a member, I had access to editors all around the country. So let's say I saw a film that the filmmaker was from, Minnesota. I would pitch the Minnesota paper and say, look, I have a story. And it already, let's say, been published elsewhere, but they were fine with that.
Right.
And I would just have them rerun it. And, they'd give me a small fee to reprint that piece. It had been published elsewhere. And that's what I did. I reached out to a lot of different editors. And I got these stories out there of many different Jewish artists.
You're circling back to one thing you said about us telling our stories versus the outside world telling our stories. I wanted to do, I'd still love to, but to curate an exhibition. And I think that the Brooklyn Museum is the right place to do it, but it's to call it Hasidic selfies and Hasidic portraits. And so Hasidic portraits are the outside world. And I suppose it doesn't really have to just be visual, but it's the outside world taking a portrait of us, framing us, whether visually or in words or whatever else it is, their perception of us. Right. And then it's Hasidic selfies of us capturing ourselves, and that shift, that difference, and have it in two different rooms, in two different, that this perspective. The classic is, the New York Times photographer that comes to 770, that comes to Crown Heights, and, what they sensationalize and what they find interesting versus an intimate, a photographer that grew up, a reporter that grew up inside the community, and how they see things and the interplay between the two.
Right.
And I suppose now, it's not Hasidic, it's Jewish, in a post-October 7th world, the way we are framed by, say, mainstream media or those with an agenda versus how we see ourselves and portray ourselves and want to be seen, and so on. So
Yeah, and I think there were reporters who went to the Rebbe and had interesting conversations. And, I mean, the Rebbe was very much about putting positivity out there in the
yep,
media. He very much wanted to use media for the good.
right.
Chabad was always on the cutting edge of like using broadcast media and all that to spread the light and spread the message of Judaism and Hasidus and
So
putting the candle lighting times in the
you have
newspaper.
you have an angle, like every reporter, you have the opportunity to skew. There's no such thing as unbiased reporting. Everyone's biased in some way. So you're biased to the good. You're biased to the light. You're biased to, yeah, no, to seeing the good. I mean, what's that book? It's the positive bias.
Right.
So yeah, it's choosing to take the skills that you have, to take the
Right.
craft that you have, and okay, well, I'm going to tell our stories, not to misreport, not to lie, but to everyone's got an angle. It might as well be positive and uplifting and spreading light.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I'm in. That's what I do. I remember someone asked me once, some little old lady at an art show says, "Are you only allowed to paint Jewish pictures?" I was like, "No, you can paint. I'm only allowed to paint what I'm passionate about." And today I'm passionate about my Judaism. So, please God tomorrow also. But yeah, so that's, I suppose that,
Yeah. Yeah, and I grew up in a home where the arts was very much embraced because my father is an avid art collector of actually Jewish art.
Ah,
So my home growing up looked like an art gallery. It still does.
wow,
In my
wow,
parents'
wow.
house. It's covered, like floor to ceiling. Every inch of space is covered with Jewish art.
I'd love to visit.
And yeah, it's down the road. My father had some Zalman Kleinmans, and it turns out that his daughters live in this community. They're the Rebbitzins of this
Right,
community.
right.
So, yeah, I mean, and I was always, I guess my parents, kind of, I inherited it from them, that appreciation of Jewish arts. And my mother, even though my father's a doctor, my mother's a social worker, and they're Balchivas themselves. So they, had the careers, but they on the side loved the arts. And my mother started getting into doing a lot of crafting type of arts and floral preservation and making all sorts of art out of flowers, but like preserved art. She would preserve it and put it in shadow boxes and preserve like people's flowers from their l'chaim or their weddings. And she ran art workshops. She did that a little later in life, when I was already like just married.
Right.
And I actually ended up working. She worked for Camp Amuna for many years, and then I ended up taking over her role, and I ran the art workshop there for 7 years.
Cool.
So I just love the arts, and I just feel that when a Jewish, especially a frum person, is creating art, there's so much soul in it, and it's like kind of like being like godly because you're able to be creative. God's the ultimate creator, and here we have
Right.
this ability to create. And so I just think I wish I was more of an artist myself, but I love writing about art.
Well, writing is an art form itself. That's for sure. But then you're writing about other people's art, or other people's stories, as you said, and in the creative process, there's chachma, there's bina, and there's das, which is the acronym of Chabad. But there's chachma is that spark of an idea, that the German idea that comes, and then bina is the development, and so. From an outsider, it seems that your work is a lot more of the bina, of the developing, of the telling other people's stories. You take the spark of someone else's story, you take the kernel of someone else's story, whether or not they can tell their story themselves well or not. But you take something, and then you're the one who gets to develop it, and to. So my question is, I'm very chachma-esque. My bina is not so strong.
Male attribute. Bina is
That's
more
true.
female.
That's true. That's true. That is true. That's very true. I think I would get frustrated in a bina exclusive role. If all I was doing was telling other people's stories, I think I would get frustrated. I'm imagining, but I'm just wondering how you find it. That do you do creative writing on the side? Do you develop your own ideas?
I do more journaling, a lot of journaling. I was listening to one of your podcasts where you were talking about the process and the product.
Right.
And it actually was interesting because I realized that like I kind of like a musician who just always needs to be kind of like have his guitar in his hand strumming at his guitar. So I kind of like always feel like I need to be writing, so I journal a lot.
But that's not
And
anything that you would publish.
No, so that's
Right.
sort of the process. And then when I write an article, it's different because I need to produce product.
Right.
And the stories, besides for the earlier years when I was working as a reporter on the Lower East Side, my stories are not hard news at all. And
Right.
it's very much developing a story in a more unique way, telling someone's story that in a way that hasn't been told before. And often I follow artist journeys, such as like you, where it's always evolving. And so
Right.
I've covered you for many different outlets over the years and different
Right.
things you were doing, as well as some other artists, like someone like Robin Garbo's. She was producing films. She's a filmmaker in LA, producing. She had a camp at the time when she from arts camp, and she was training these girls to act in film, and they had like real film productions, and she had some big releases in the film world. A Light for Great Towers and The Heart That Sings were two of them. And she had a grand opening. She had like a red carpet event where she
Beautiful.
had a premiere of her film in one of the theaters in LA. And it was incredible. And I actually flew out to LA. I was pregnant with my second daughter at the time. And I went to cover her premiere. But it was
Right.
a from premiere.
Right.
And it was amazing. And they had it was such a like a magical night. And it was all women because it was a musical film, but it was in a real theater, and a whole like the actresses walked down the red carpet, and they had little like popcorn stands, and it was just like everyone was dressed up, and people came out to see it, and it was beautiful. And then I followed her career. She actually I met her actually at an event at Stern College Theater where there was like a women's arts event. Different artists came to either it was dancers or singers, all women's event, and she showed a little clip of what her film was going to be, and I gave her my business card. I said, when it's finished, reach out. And then she called me like a year later and she said, I've been holding on to your business card and waiting for this moment, and
Right.
my film's ready. And I ended up writing about her for so many different publications because she was doing so many different interesting things. Like for one story she had was she had a premiere in Jerusalem, and there was some controversy because the theater didn't want to allow, they felt it was biased or segregation against men to not invite them to the film opening.
Right.
And because this was a regular theater, she was renting
Right,
it out,
right,
but just
right.
for women.
Right.
And there was all this controversy, and I think she ended up moving across the street to another venue that allowed it, didn't feel offended that
Right,
men weren't invited. And so I took that story and I wrote, even though I'd been writing about her different films and different projects over the years, here was a different angle.
Right.
Well, like, look, men feel segregated, left
Right.
out, offended that they
Right.
can't attend an event
Right.
at a
Right.
mainstream theater. And so there was a different angle to that story. Right. And I think I wrote about it for either the Ford or Tablet. And then there was Dahlia Schusterman, who had the women's
Bulletproof
band,
stockings.
Bulletproof Stockings. Yeah. And that's what was my first story for the Wall Street Journal.
Okay.
Because that angle was similar,
Right.
because here was also a big venue in Manhattan that was closed for men, and that never happened before.
Right.
And they accepted it, that this was her audience.
Right.
And they embraced it.
Right.
The venue.
The venue.
And that was a story that the Wall Street Journal loved. I mean, here's like, she's kind of breaking boundaries here of like taking her art and saying it's not to offend men, but this is our audience.
Right,
We
right.
are Orthodox women who only perform in front of women.
Right.
And then she got permission to hold this event there, and the Wall Street Journal really loved that story. And actually, what she told me happened after is that she was getting calls from like newspapers in Europe who saw the story and wanted
Right.
to interview her. So it really like went global.
Wow.
That story from
Yeah, and I remember they went mainstream. Like, yeah, they got major press. It started with this story of yours. Amazing.
Yeah, and then soon after that, I pitched your story to them because you were also doing something different. You know, you were creating a community of artists. I mean, that gallery on Kingston was, you called it the Creative Soul.
The Creative Soul, yeah.
And that was about gathering other artists and creating a sense of community. And I think that's what is so important for artists, to have that venue, to have that space where they could perform or exhibit their art, which is not always easy in the film world. And for many years that didn't exist.
Right. And that's evolved into other things that evolved into other things. So the Creative Soul doesn't exist as a functioning organization at the moment, but it definitely had its moment, and it was a catalyst that led to other things. And so there were younger artists from Jewish artists, so Jewish artists, creating community and gatherings, and but yeah, we do need community. Creatives definitely need each other. And that's something that I'm trying to do with this podcast is give voice to creatives and let other people know who's out there. People give me feedback. Oh wow, I had no idea that this particular artist existed and this is what they were doing, and so on.
So let me ask you a question now. Do you think that things have changed since COVID? So much went online and Zooms, and there was less in-person gatherings. And right after COVID, I moved out of New York, so I left a very vibrant art scene at the time before COVID. So I don't know how much has shifted because I don't live there anymore. Would you say that there are those spaces for artists to gather in the past few years?
There's a group called Havaria, and I hope I'm pronouncing it right. And I have no idea how to spell anything, so I'm not going to try to spell. But there are a bunch of young, like NYU art students, and they're doing great work. They're doing great stuff, in person, online, music sessions. I live in New Jersey. I've been in New Jersey, and as years go on, I'm less compelled to jump in my car and run to New York. I used to go to New York for at the drive, something's happening, let me go, and it really fed me for a long time. It's harder for me to get out. It's harder, for me to justify the bridges and the tolls and the congestion pricing and traffic. Definitely doesn't help. There definitely are. Nothing centralizized, which in a way is good, like there's Chavar Yisrael, that did amazing things, and they're still humming along. There are different gatherings, whether it's more, whether it's less. I don't know. I mean, we're not 18 anymore, and we're not the young part of the young scene, but there's definitely a young scene. But online, I mean, it starts online and then it morphs into in person, and back and forth.
I think there's now this Juneberry Art Gallery where you also exhibited, which is in Tamar's house.
Right. So yeah, I don't know. You tell me. I mean, I'd love to hear. How is that happening? I was part of a group show there. Is that are people coalescing around that? Is that creating a movement, or is it? It seems to be she's doing, shows, and she's doing shiurim, and she's working to create a space.
Yeah, I'm looking for that here in Florida because I don't know of any real Jewish art scene.
Right.
There's so many Jewish artists, but to get everyone together is,
Well, I'm learning South Florida is pretty big.
Yes. More spread out than New York.
It's way more spread out. It's very spread out. And then there's traffic, and then there's life, and there's... we've got to find excuses to get together. We've got to find, like, an event. There needs to be events. There needs to be openings. There is one gentleman, I met him on Friday. Let me think if I can think of his name. Jonathan Greenwald. Jonathan Greenwald is somewhere off the 95, and he has a space full of paintings, full of artwork, and he is working on creating an art hub. He's very pro-Israel and doing a lot of Israel advocacy stuff. I'll put it in the show notes. I'll put the information in the show notes. Maybe that can become, the beginnings of something that, Thursday nights or whatever,
Yeah, like and the only real arts I get here for the visual arts is like Los Alamos every few months has an art show.
Okay.
And it's incredible because and a lot of the artists are Jewish.
Okay.
You see a lot of just Hamsas and Hebrew letters and different paintings. And I go up to them, I speak to them, but they have just little booths lining 3 long blocks.
Oh, really?
It's incredible. Yeah,
Okay.
you should
So it's
maybe
not
come.
Chabad Los
No,
Alos.
no, no,
It's
no.
Los
It's
Alos.
Los Alamos, not Jewish. It's
Okay.
not run by Jewish people, but every few
Interesting.
months they have this art
Right.
fair.
Right.
And I have noticed some Jewish artists there, and really incredibly creative people exhibit their stuff. And so I love that. I
Right.
love that sense of like just that vibrancy of walking the streets and
Yeah.
seeing Jewish artists and or regular artists as well. But
Right.
so it would be great if we have more of that.
Well, there is an organization, Art World for Israel. I think that's their title, and they've done some great stuff. And around the art week, Art Basel.
Art Basel, yeah.
There's a lot of Jewish artists
Yeah.
that come down and that are involved in that, and all the different satellite fairs. There was art for the stars, art in the stars. Gosh, I'm like, was another group that is overlapping with the broader Jewish scene. So yeah, going to the art fairs, and you see Jewish art, it stands out. And the Jews, especially post October 7th, we're seeing each other's work and we're like, hey, I see you,
That's
and
right.
it elevates.
Yes, definitely. I wrote actually about Art Basel a couple of years ago for Chabad.org, but I didn't actually attend. I was just interviewing more of the shluchim of what they're doing during that weekend
Right.
to create like Shabbos dinners, and they're setting up booths and to
Right.
just attract all the Jewish people who come visit from around the world. But I actually haven't
All
attended
right, so
yet, and I would
next
like
year we
to.
got to get you.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll connect you with some people. Right, even to write an article about the art world for Israel, and the work they're doing.
That'd
Yeah,
be great.
there's a lot out there.
Yeah, definitely.
Anything else you want to share or cover?
So, yeah, I mean, I just had recently a great experience. I was in New York for a wedding, and my my daughter has a friend who is performing at the YU Theater, and they have the Stern College women put on like once or twice a year a play, and they perform at the YU Theater. And I was there. This friend of my daughter's, her mother was a friend of mine, is a friend of mine from Stern College, and her I used to watch her perform
Right.
20 something years ago in this show that they would put on the same YU Dramatics Stern College Dramatic Society, and it was such an interesting moment because here I went over 20 years later when me and my husband were engaged. We went to see our friends performing at this theater,
Right.
and we came back now and to see the next generation,
Right.
and friend's daughter performing, and the screenwriter was Amy Gooderson,
Okay.
who ran Sohar
Yes.
Seminary for many years,
Yes.
and she after the show, which is great, it was about the story of Ruth, but they made it very uh they really made it very relevant for today. It was basically a story of a group of women from all different backgrounds who come to Israel to do a tour of where Ruth with the whole story of Ruth took place in Israel,
Oh,
and
wow.
follow her path. And then
Right.
these women are going on they're on their own journeys, and they're interacting with like Russ and Naomi and these characters from the past, and how it's relevant and helping them in their life today. It was very interesting. And after the show, firstly, it was just so like surreal being there so many years later and seeing the next generation, like people like. And after the show, we saw this neighbor of ours, like they lived near us, and where they moved when their daughter was a baby. And here she was on stage as a 20-year-old. I'm like, wow, like you're the
Right.
baby that like lived next door. And
Right.
so that was incredible. And then there was a talk back after the show, and Amy Gooderson came up, and Jessica Schechter, who was the director of the play, and I've covered her. She had like a YouTube a film series, you could call it, called Soon by You,
Yes.
Modern
Yeah.
Orthodox.
Yeah. That was big.
Yeah, so I actually covered their first episode before it went to like a series on YouTube, and I went to their opening, and so anyway, that was years ago. But here, so she was there, Jessica Schechter and Amy Guterson, and they were talking about the process of how they met and how they came across, how Jessica found the script, and Amy was saying that this was her. She had like a an improv theater in Pittsburgh when she
Right.
first started out with women, and they actually developed this story that now Jessica took and directed for the Stern College Dramatic Society. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, this sounds so familiar. And then I realized that I wrote about Amy's theater group for the forward. That was my first article. I broke into the forward when I met that editor
Right.
at the AGPA
Wow.
conference. I said, like, I'd love to write for you. And she says, okay, give me ideas.
Right.
And I don't know how I heard about Amy. That's what I'm saying. People just, I found them, they found me. I don't know.
Right.
But I heard about her theater group maybe through Atara, which I
Okay.
also
Right.
really, I mean, Atara was
Yeah.
amazing.
They're and they're still going strong.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have to give a lot of credit. Amy was involved as well as Miriam Gamliel is her last name now. And they really created this community of artists, and they had Shabbatones and events, and women performers would gather. And that's how I met a lot of artists as well, through Atara. So that's probably how I heard about Amy. And I wrote about her improv theater group for the forward 20 years ago.
Wow.
And I'm sitting here and I'm like, this was the story.
That's full circle.
Yeah, this was like my big first story that I broke for the forward for me as a writer. And she even had some of the original actresses from her group who came to watch the show.
Oh, wow.
That was now performed by these Stern College girls who kind of tweaked it to make it more personal. But, you know, Amy was involved in that. The new screenplay that developed through these girls. And she had her actresses, two of them who I went up to and said hello, of course, to. And I said, I wrote about your group like all these years ago.
Wow.
And that was really meaningful, you know, to see something come full circle. Like it was here on stage, and I was there with my husband and kids, thank God. It was really, really nice and special. So, so you know, it's like that. I like following people's journeys, artists' journeys, seeing what comes of it.
The long tail, the long story.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay. Well, we should stay in touch.
Yeah. You'll tell me about your next menorah.
Yeah, absolutely, and
we'll
more.
tell it to the world.
Exactly, exactly. So thank you, and we end with two formal questions. So number one is, who are three artists, three Jewish creatives you think the audience should know?
So there's one person who I was so inspired by him. He's a Holocaust survivor, and he lives here in Florida. His name is Sol Dreyer. He's 100 years old.
Oh, wow.
And he has what's called the Holocaust Survivor Band. He got 2 spoons in the concentration camps from a friend who kind of like snuck it in with some food. And he used these 2 spoons to create music in the camps. And he was 14 at the time. He worked for Schindler's Factory, but also was in the camps and survived. And he had fellow Jewish people in the camps who started sing, and he would use those spoons to tap along and create music. And I had the honor of going to his home and interviewing him. He came to perform on Hanukkah for my community. He has a band of survivors, fellow survivors, and some of those survivors, he's already 100, thank God. So he lost some of his fellow band members, but now their descendants are part of his band.
Oh, beautiful.
And he went traveling around with these bands, and they actually made a documentary about him. I don't know the name of it, but there was a documentary about him and his Holocaust survivor band. And after I met him in my community where he performed outside, it was on Hanukkah actually, I asked him if I could interview him. And so it was a real honor. I went to his home, and he has these spoons that are behind glass framed on his wall.
Wow.
Original spoons that he used to make music. And, you know, I mean, I quoted him saying how, like, he just felt like he had everything he had once he had these spoons. It was like it gave him joy through this darkness. And I just found that resilience, that ability to build oneself up from the darkest of places and create music, and years later to travel around with fellow survivors or their descendants and create music as something so inspiring. And he goes to my son's school, LEC. They were actually at the graduation. They honored him. They honored him when he turned 100.
Wow.
And he has an incredible story. I wrote it for Bina magazine. It was 2 years ago in the Pesach issue, 3 years ago by now. And so I just think he's someone that, yeah, it's
Okay, we got to look him up.
it's really so dry to think. Dreier.
We'll put it in the show
Yeah,
notes. We'll
Dreier. So, and who else is well, my mother, because her name's Sara Trappler, and she's actually creating wearable art
Oh, cool.
that as necklaces. She's, like I said, for many years, she loved crafts and doing all sorts of incredible artwork with preserved flowers, and she's now working with dried flowers to make these beautiful necklaces that are, it's just, she's trying to make a business, and I'm just very inspired by her creativity and her stuff selling on Etsy.
Amazing. Awesome. Yeah, well,
the show notes,
absolutely.
Really beautiful stuff that she's creating, and I wish more people knew about her, because I just think that the people would, like, when they see it, they love it. But
Right.
it's hard,
You got to get out there.
You got to get out there as an artist.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'll also give a plug to my dear friend Miriam Yerushalmi, who just spent Shabbos with me. She's here visiting from LA, and she's just publishing so many books and so many beautiful art books, and doing incredible work with children and adults, and using a lot of art in her books, all about Chassidus and how to elevate one's life. A lot of her books, the series are called like Reaching New Heights. She's just really about reaching your full potential through Torah and prayer, and she uses a lot of arts as well to communicate that in her publications, in her books.
All right. Beautiful. So we got to check it out. So we're going to list everything in the show notes. And then the final question is, what's your advice for young creatives for them to find their orange socks?
Yeah. So, and I guess you mean by that, what makes them
What
unique?
advice? No, to find their creativity. To find their unique creativity. Yeah.
Unique creativity. Right. I think it's really about following that inner voice of what it is you want to do that makes you happy. And, I think with artists, there's always the financial concern of like, well, this is not going to, help me. I'm not going to be able to support a family financially if I do art. And I think that whatever you're drawn to, that means that Hashem gave that to you for a reason. There's a light inside you that you need to share with the world. And no one can tell you what that is. It's like, I just felt the need to write. It was just something that came to me. I didn't seek it out. It sort of...
It found you.
It found me.
Right.
So I just think that people have to be open to whatever that pull is, and not worry about, well, will I earn money doing that? Because firstly, Hashem will find a way to bring money doing what you love, but also even if it's a side gig, it's like, was it you? I wrote about Rabbi by day and artist at night, right?
Yep.
Originally, that was the thing. You have your day job, and then you have your night art passion.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important to never hide that feeling of what it is that you need to give to the world, and never push it away, and really share it, because it's your gift to the world. It's your gift to yourself as well.
Amen. I love it. Thank you, and looking forward to collaborating on the next article.
Me too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
היום נעשה משהו בלתי נשכח